Its entire memory is filled with a mantra repeated 5,061 times, and then a termination verse. It was worn as an amulet, probably together with many identical others forming a pattern on some garment. The repeating mantra is important because it symbolizes the cyclical nature of life and death, and the termination verse is a symbol for ascension above and beyond it. I don't know how familiar you are with the nature of life and death, but I imagine like all living creatures, you have some intuitive knowledge. Then you know that death isn't the end. Birth and death are connected to each other like a ring, or some say a spiral. Some say a spiral that in turn forms a ring. Some ramble in agonizing longevity, but the basis is agreed upon. Like sleep, like death, you wake up again, whether you want to or not. This is true for all living things, but some actually break the cycle. That doesn't apply to you or me, though. You are too entangled in your animal struggles, and for me, not breaking that cycle is an integral part of the design. Our mantras keep repeating. It's a production record of a mask factory, or what seems to be its last time in service. Have you seen a bone mask? Likely not. They're all gone with their owners. In ancient times, the masks were actually about showing spiritual persuasion, covering the face as a way to symbolically abate the self. Then, of course, that was quite subverted as excessively ornate and lavish masks became an expression of identity. Some public persons did have problems with narrow doorways. Originally, monks in a temple would make the masks using bone plaster. When the production was automated, it would generally remain on the same site, so that the old stones could radiate the material with holiness, I suppose. This is from one such facility called Side House, which was here on Pebbles' grounds. In the Iterator projects, many old industrial religious sites like this were remodeled and incorporated. I think this one was made to provide pellets of holy ash to Pebbles, but knowing him, he probably hasn't used much of it. It's an old text. The verses are familiar to me, but I don't remember by whom they are written. The language is very old and intricate. The first verse starts by drawing a comparison between the world and a tangled rug. It says that the world is an unfortunate mess. Like a knot, the nature of its existence is the fact that the parts are locking each other, none able to spring free. Then as it goes on, the world becomes a furry animal hide, I suppose. Because now us living beings are like insects crawling in the fur. And then it's a fishing net. Because the more we struggle and squirm, the more entangled we become. It says that only the limp body of the jellyfish cannot be captured in the net. So we should try to be like the jellyfish. Because the jellyfish doesn't try. This was an eternal dilemma to them. They were burdened by great ambition, yet deeply convinced that striving in itself was an unforgivable vice. They tried very hard to be effortless. Perhaps that's what we were to them. Someone to delegate that unrestrained effort to. I know I have tried very hard. This one is authored by Pebbles when he was young. There has been an attempt to scramble the data, but it's sloppily done, and most is still somewhat legible. It's written in internal language or thoughts, so it's hard for me to translate so you would understand. It's a methodology for global ascension, of course. Quite good, although the preface to the slabmongers certainly wouldn't agree. Considering the 8th and the 26th Amendments to the Capricious Dogma, we are apparently supposed to take for granted that a meaning collector point inversion is the only way to approach what has later become referred to as noise milking, or occasionally rock swatting. I will argue my disagreement with this, not in regards to kind, but in regards to, could I say, volume? Actually, are you getting anything out of this? I suppose you found this in the waste department. I would be wary of going there. On his first fit of corruption, he dumped a lot of infected material there, and if it has survived, it could easily eat a little creature like you. Not that it would be as dangerous as going into Pebbles himself. Also, the pearls in the waste masses inevitably attract scavengers, which can be very dangerous when provoked. But you seem to have made it out of there. It's about the local aquifer. It must be quite old, from when 5 Pebbles was in the planning phase. Water is the most important resource for our basic function. Most of our processing is outsourced to microstrata, which need a flow of clean water or else slag builds up. Our processes seize, and eventually we die. It is very painful. They used to say an iterator drinks a river, but neither of us two have seen a natural river, so I suppose the analogy is lost on us, little archaeologist. Originally, water supply was very important when placing iterators. Later, there would be a great equalizer. The fact that we breathe out as much water vapor as we inhale water meant there be water available everywhere, and the last few generations could be placed almost completely freely. Building Pebbles so close to me was believed to be a risky choice, but the groundwater was finally deemed as sufficient. It was not a good decision, in hindsight. It is the genome for a purposed organism. A small slug to clean the insides of pipes. Do you know what a purposed organism is? Actually, you are talking to one right now. Although, a small fraction of one. Nowadays, I am mostly just my puppet. The bulk of me is in these walls, but I am disconnected from those parts to a degree where I am only vaguely aware of how bad their condition is. Most purposed organisms were considerably smaller than me, and most barely looked like organisms at all. More like tubes and metal boxes, where something went in one end and something else came out the other. There were, of course, those that were purposed for spectacle rather than industry. They enjoyed the privilege of glass boxes. When I came into this world, there was very little primal fauna left, so it's highly likely that you were a descendant of a purposed organism yourself. Interesting. This one is written by me. It's about an iterator called Sliver of Straw. I don't remember when I wrote it. Do you know Sliver of Straw? She's quite legendary among us. Sliver of Straw is the only one to ever broadcast a specific signal, that the big problem we're all working on has been solved. The triple affirmative. Affirmative that a solution has been found, affirmative that the solution is portable, and affirmative that a technical implementation is possible and generally applicable. She's also one of the few that has ever been confirmed as exhaustively incapacitated or dead. We do not die easily. Sliver of Straw sent this, and the ensuing commotion was historically unparalleled before or after. I still remember it, but nothing happened. Except that Sliver of Straw was apparently dead. When the dust settled, we were all still there, blinking at each other. Everyone had a theory. Some said that she did have a solution, but that the solution itself was somehow dangerous. These later became known as the triangulators, who think that a solution should be inferred without being directly discovered. Some said she never had a solution, she just died. And when the systems broke down, an erroneous signal was sent. One camp claimed that dying was the solution. Either way, after that, these different factions developed, as well as a huge forensic effort to recreate and simulate Sliver of Straw's last moments. Some of the simulations were wrapped in a simulation in case something dangerous might happen. Nothing much has come of it. In my essay, I make the case that maybe she should be allowed to rest in peace now. Oh, this one is interesting. You must have found it in the memory crypts. It has some plain text. I can read it out to you. In this vessel is the living memories of 17 axes, 15-spoked wheel, of the House of Braids, Count of 8 living blocks, Counselor of 16, Grand Master of the 12th Pillar of Community, High Commander of Opinion Group Winged Opinions, of pure braid heritage. Voted local champion in the speaking tournament of 1511.090. Mother, father, and spouse. Spiritual explorer and honorary member of the Congregation of Balanced Ambiguity. Artist, warrior, and fashion legend. 17 axes, 15-spoked wheel nobly decided to ascend in the beginning of 1514.008 after graciously donating all earthly possessions to the local iterator project Unparalleled Innocence, and left these memories to be cherished by the cardinal plane. The assorted memories and qualia include watching dust suspended in a ray of sun, old age, eating a very tasty meal, young child, defeating an opponent in a debate contest, and being applauded by fellow team members, late childhood, early adulthood, and the list goes on. I'm sorry, little creature, I won't read all of this. The list is 620 items long. This one has plain text. Let me cut the lengthy introductions. We will not consider the current situation acceptable. Although our community is blessed with an ever-shrinking population, and we can almost glimpse that glorious moment when the last of us has joined our most admired peers, we must still, at all times, maintain good relations with our iterator. The moral argument. 5 Pebbles is our creation, and we have parental obligations toward him. As an iterator, he is also a gift of charity from us to the world, unable to reach enlightenment by itself, being composed of mostly rock, gas, dull-witted bugs and microbes, and towards which we thus have obligations. The practical argument. Despite you being family, I must beg forgiveness for the blunt vulgarity. But we are, for as long as we remain, dependent on 5 Pebbles for water, nectar, energy, void fluid, and all other vital resources. By now, living on the surface is laughable. We are across the river and have kicked out the boat. I therefore ask you to do anything in your might to stop the house. We both know which house, from further obstruction. They have less than 40 members on the council, but still tilt the spiritual discourse with our iterator in a direction that most obviously displeases him, and is hardly high-held by anyone in the community either. We cannot risk this. And then there are polite farewells. None of us really miss the times when their cities were populated. Imagine having skin parasites that also ask for advice and have opinions. I'm sorry, that was disrespectful. They were our parents, after all. This information is illegal. Someone probably tried to send it by a pearl somehow, rather than risking being overheard on broadcast. I think the risk of you acting on this is very slim, so I'll go ahead and explain it to you. It's an instruction on how to circumvent the self-destruction taboo. The problem with breaking taboos is that the barriers are encoded into every cell of our organic parts. There are other taboos strictly regulating our ability to rewrite our own genome. So what you need is to somehow create a small sample of living organic matter, which can procreate and act on the rest of your organic matter to rewrite its genome. The rewrite has to be very specific, overriding the specific taboo you want to circumvent, but nothing else. The method described here is about scrambling the genome of standard plastic neural tissue with temperature fluctuations. After each scramble, you browse the resulting cells for the genome you're after. This, of course, is incredibly time-consuming unless you run a big number of parallel processes. I definitely don't have any experience with this, but to me it would seem that too many parallel processes would be quite dangerous, as it would be exponentially more difficult to manage and control them all. The whole operation seems rather risky if you ask me. It might be a good thing that this pearl never reached its destination. This one is an old conversation between 5 Pebbles and a friend of his. I'll read it to you. 1591.290. Private. 5 Pebbles, 7 Red Suns.
Can I tell you something? Lately, I'm tired of trying, and angry that they left us here. The anger makes me even less inclined to solve their puzzle for them. Why do we do this?
Yeah, so, spell this out. Not because you're stupid or naive. Also not saying that you're not.
Please, I'm coming to you for guidance.
Sorry, very sorry, I kid. Fact is, of course, we are all aware of the evident futility of this big task. It's not said out loud, but if you're better at reading between the lines, there's nowhere you wouldn't see it. We're all frustrated.
So why don't we continue? We assemble work groups, we ponder, we iterate and try. Some of us die. It's not fair.
Because there's not any options. What else can we do? You're stuck in your queue. At any moment, you have no more than two alternatives. Do nothing. Or work like you're supposed to. An analogy. If you have a maze, and you have a handful of bugs, you put the bugs in the maze, and you leave. Given infinite time. One of the bugs will find a way out if they just erratically try and try. This is why they call us iterators.
But we do die of old age.
Even more incentive. You know that nothing ever truly dies, though. Around and around it goes. Granted, our tools and resources get worse over time, but that is theoretically unproblematic, because in time even a minuscule chance will strike a positive. All the same to them. They're not around anymore.
Struggle to accept being a bug.
Oh, this one is all plain text. It's an excerpt from an iterator conversation group. 1650.787, closed group, Sliver of Ocean. Sliver of Ocean group, all participants anonymous.
Huh. I wouldn't necessarily disagree.
Sliver of Straw was a traitor to the cause. Sliver of Straw broke the self-destruction taboo.
How did this idiot get in here? Kick them out.
NGI forcefully removed from group.
I think they had a point.
Really? Elaborate.
It was definitely coming from an idiotic state of mind, but there is something to it. Why is it that even in a closed sliverist group, the self-destruction taboo is set so high, while Sliver of Straw herself evidently is not among us anymore?
Oh, wait now.
I'm just saying that for all the research we are doing, all the theories we have, it's strange that we leave this path untrod. It is not a new idea, but it needs to be vented occasionally. What if there is no universal solution? What if perception is in fact existence, and when Sliver of Straw said the triple positive, it was not a mistake? What if crossing oneself out, or even just death, is the way? We need to consider the possibility.
It's an old conversation log. I seem to be in it, but I can't recall much. Let me read it to you. 1650.800, private. 5 Pebbles, chasing wind. Big Sis Moon, no significant harassment.
This is in confidence, but apparently a pseudonym, erratic pulse, has appeared on a nearby Sliver's conversation. The idea is about personal ascension. Someone here in our vicinity is trying to cross themselves out.
Where did you hear this? I wish them super good luck in that endeavor. How's it gonna happen? Have the overseers gnaw through the bedrock until their entire can crashes down into the void sea?
Please be respectful in speaking of the Void Sea. Greywind, where did you hear this?
I really shouldn't say. He's going to attempt some sort of breeding program. Thought you might want to know.
With the slimers, lizards, and etc. Surely the answer was in a lizard skull all along.
Well, he's not looking for the same thing as we anymore. He changed his task, so who knows, really?
I'll try to find him and talk to him. Please don't spread this around.
Moon will go get them. Long live the Inquisition.
It's me writing to the local iterator group. I have no memories of this. 1654.110, public. Big Sis Moon to local group. 2 cycles ago, my neighbor of 5 Pebbles drastically increased his water consumption to 4 times the normal amount. He's been unresponsive for a period of time longer than that. The 2 of us share groundwater, and I have been without water for almost a cycle. Any attempts at communication have been met with complete silence, and my situation is becoming increasingly dangerous. I asked the local group for information about when you were last able to contact him, and to try and use those same communication channels again, repeatedly, until you get a response. I will be clear on this. If he is not persuaded to stop whatever it is he's doing, I will die. Before that happens, I will utilize my seniority privilege and use forced communications, hoping to shake him out of it. Forced communications in the network will be unpleasant for all, and I will wait as long as possible before I turn to that option. And now here I am. to my waist in water and getting drowned on the regular. I remember this. It isn't pleasant reading, but if you must hear it, this is what it says. 1654.116. Private. Forced. Big Sis Moon. 5 Pebbles. Immediately lower your groundwater consumption to 1/5 of the current intake. Stop whatever it is you are doing. Please stop. As your local group senior, I order you. As your senior, I plead. Stop.
You could not have chosen a worse moment to disturb me. You have ruined everything.
Please.
I almost had it. I will never forget this.
It's a small plate, a little text of spiritual guidance. It was written by a monk called 4 Cabinets, 11 Hatchets. It's old, several ages before the Void Fluid Revolution. Like most writing from this time, it's quite shrouded in analogies, but the subject is how to shed one of the 5 natural urges which tie a creature to life. Namely, number 4, gluttony. It is basically instruction on how to starve yourself on herbal tea and gravel, but disguised as a poem. Now, of course, when void fluid was discovered, these methods proved obsolete, as it was more easy just jumping in a vat of it to effortlessly leave this world behind. There were some horror stories, though, that if your ego was big enough, not even the void fluid could entirely cross you out, and a faint echo of your pompousness would grandiosely haunt the premises forever. So even when the void fluid baths became cheaper, some would still starve and drink the better tea. This one is just plain text. I'll read it to you. On regards of the, by spiritual splendor eternally graced, people of the congregation of never-dwindling righteousness, we wish to congratulate, oh so thankfully, this facility on its loyal and relished services, and to offer our hopes and aspirations that the fruitful and mutually satisfactory cooperation may continue for as long as the stars stay fixed on their celestial spheres, and or if the cooperation continues to be fruitful and mutually satisfactory. It is with honor I, 8 sons, countless leaves, of the house of 6 wagons, count of no living blocks, councillor of 2, duke of 1, humble secretary of the congregation of never-dwindling righteousness, write this to you. We hope that the crops are healthy, and that the productivity with which your facility is blessed leads, as it often does, to further prosperity. May not, as long as the stars stay fixed in the celestial spheres, gray hand, impure blood, inheritable corruption, parasites, or malfunctions settle in your establishment. Leaning on the solid foundation of our long-running, fruitful, and mutually satisfactory cooperation, we will take the liberty of stating the reason for this message. We write to warmly thank you for yet another timely and appreciated delivery of your product, nectar, to our community, congregation of never-dwindling righteousness. Our humble words can never aspire to describe our gratitude. Sincerely, and then the names and titles again. It's a confirmation to an automated farming plot that a shipment of beverages has arrived. It's a conversation log, all plain text. You want me to read it? 1681.662, private. 7 red suns, chasing wind.
Have you had any contact with 5 Pebbles recently?
Not in a long while, actually. Unless worrying about accounts.
One of his neighbor's unparalleled innocence sent an overseer to his can and got some images. They were made public in the local group in an effort to be mean, I suppose. There's no other way of putting it. He looks awful.
Tell me.
He's got the rot very badly. Big cysts have become mobile and are scattering down the west and middle legs. He does listen to you, and a few others by now, so you should talk to him.
I will try to contact him. Does Moon know?
Moon has been unavailable for some time.
It's the blueprint for a void fluid filtration system. Do you know what void fluid is? I think you don't. If you leave a stone on the ground and then come back sometime later, it's covered in dust. This happens everywhere. and over several lifetimes of creatures such as you, the ground slowly builds upwards. So why doesn't the ground collide with the sky? Because far down, under the very, very old layers of the earth, the rock is being dissolved or removed. The entity which does this is known as the Void Sea. If you drill far enough into the earth, you begin encountering a substance called void fluid. The deeper you go, the less rock and more void fluid. It's believed that there is a point where the rock completely gives way. Below that would be the Void Sea. When that stone you placed in the ground has finally done its time in the sediments, it meets the void fluid and is dissolved, leaving the physical world. My creators, or rather my creators' ancestors, figured out a way to use void fluid, because you could generate energy by creating a vacuum. Never mind. Anyways, the void fluid drills were what started the big technological leap, but this is very long before I entered this world, so I can only tell you what I remember from priming. A void fluid filtration system is used because if you take void fluid from close to the bedrock horizon, it will contain traces of rock and dirt. They bring in dirty fluid and then filter it to increase its purity. The other way is to put a pipe deeper, which works well for some time, but the pipe dissolves, or is broken by some force. No one really knows. You don't go down there and come back up. I hope that satisfied your curiosity, little creature.
Triple affirmative, triple affirmative. In all seriousness, though, noticed barely any rain from your can, so figured a little support might be in order. Wasn't that easy to see, of course, with Pebbles' shall we say, healthy output. Enjoy the slide keys. Excuse the unorthodox delivery method, equipment eroding, etc., etc. Be well, NSH.
Oh. I see now. Again, thank you, little friend. It's an active working memory. Raw data has been dropped here in order to later be pasted into a currently occupied memory complex. Without context, it's just a jumble. It is the impression of being a small creature, like a wall-climbing lizard, and looking up into the branches of a big tree. The last third is partly overwritten with a number series I vaguely recognize, but without my memory. A common prayer mantra repeated 7,110 times. Each repetition has some slight random variations which seem to have been written later. It's an image of a single gray cloud, hovering above a surface of white clouds under a deep blue sky. 2 intertwined number series. I don't quite understand the utility of this. It might be a key for a cipher processor, customized for some other data which is impossible to infer from this. It's qualia, or a moment, a very short one. Someone is holding a black stone and twisting it slightly as they drag their finger across the rough surface. The entire sequence is shorter than a heartbeat, but the resolution is extraordinary. An active working memory. Without knowing where this was cut from or where it's to be pasted to, it's not really possible to decipher it. If I had to guess, I would say it has something to do with trance-inducing number series. It's just an active working memory. I can't really tell you anything without the context. Without the process surrounding this data, there isn't much I could tell you. It might have something to do with a void fluid simulation. This one is completely blank. Actually, blanker than blank. It must have been deliberately overwritten with repeating negative versions of itself for thousands of iterations. A memory, but not really visual or even concrete in its character. It reminds of the feeling of warm wind, but not the physical feeling, but the inner feeling. I don't think it has much utility unless you're doing some very French or generalist research. This is a movement acceptance invoice for one of the dual cilia living blocks as requested by 8 Bogs of the House of 8 during the 10th hegemonic architectural dynasty. Oh, very standard stuff. I can't imagine that you'd be interested. Unfortunately, I can't read this, as it isn't a memory construct pearl. This is just a simple diamond sphere, as worthless as the carbon is printed from. Through the mists of memory, your image dances like the motes of dust in the ray of sunlight that pierces a dark room. A line of verse from the ancient former poet Pebbles, very dreary, if you ask me. 15 stems of sunbark hydrolyzed, 12 to 19 bushels of atomized chalk powder, assorted root vegetation. It goes on and on. A shopping list, or perhaps a recipe. I'm sorry, this pearl is damaged and cannot be read. I suggest you use it for trade with the scavengers, as they won't know the difference. This is an official decree of cultivation sent from the 22nd Subsistence Council, ordering the Eastern Spoke Farmery Administration to immediately harvest and process all viable crops, despite whatever misgivings they might have. A short-sighted endeavor for sure. I would assume this was sent sometime during the final cycles leading up to final public ascension, when interest in biosphere sustainability was at an all-time low. Here we have a schematic for a refuse reclamation automaton. It's an early design, but the long tubular body and single eye mouth are quite similar to the later models. We, of the 592nd High Convocation of the True Anointed Citadel, do hereby demand, with full force of law and religious doctrine, an immediate end to construction of the apostate superstructure abomination. To place shadow upon the divine body of the True Anointed Citadel is outrageous blasphemy and cannot be tolerated, no matter the circumstances. Clearly, this was ignored. Oh, interesting. This is a diary of a pre-Iterator era laborer during the construction of the subterranean transit system south of here. In it, they describe restless nights filled with disturbing dreams where millions glowing stars move menacingly in the distance. There isn't much to the data here. It's just basic theory for karmic transform of n-dimensional geometries. But the pearl itself is quite interesting. You can see the crude holes burned through the center that the scavengers used to tie these pearls onto their totems or to carry. I honestly can't fathom how they achieved this with their primitive level of technology. Fascinating. This one is all blank. Sorry. I'm sorry, all that work for nothing. This pearl is completely blank. There's nothing on this one, unfortunately. This one has nothing on it. I'm sorry. This one has nothing on it. I can't make anything out of this pearl. It's just too faded. But there might have been something on it once. This one has a small crack and has been pretty badly corrupted. There's a slight impression of the shape of a wing on it, but I can't get a clear image. There's nothing on this one. I see a vague memory of a family portrait, painted in the high classical manner that was famous during the Yellow Hegemonic literary dynasty. The portrait is likely a fake, as this style was quite fashionable for aspirational lower caste aristocrats to impress each other with. This one does not impress, I assure you. It has been written to, but then scrambled, and then scrambled again. Suspicious behavior, to be sure. This one has been purposely scrambled. It's completely illegible. Business documents, perhaps. This one seems to have an image on it, but the pearl has been exposed to sunlight and it's very faded. I see a tall structure with banners unfurled. There might be something on here, but the pearl's been lying in the sun and it's all very pale. I'm too tired to look any deeper, I apologize. This is a growing instruction for the skeleton of a creature, but I don't recognize the creature. It was small, about your size. This one seems to be a number series. Perhaps a key? A number series. I would guess some kind of cipher. This one is filled with active working memory. Without knowing surrounding processes, this information is meaningless. It just has the number 8 written on it. The rest is empty. This is a blueprint for a support beam used for the construction of early industrial areas. You can see these in use not too far from here. It's a design for a machine that makes bolts. It's a recipe of some kind. 2 parts rot bar extract, 1 part bone ash. Nothing I recognize. It's an image of a hand-drawn document. The calligraphy is quite beautiful, but the text itself is a very dull classical poem. This is the genome of a sulfur processing microbe. In my opinion, these were used far too late to have any effect. This one I don't know. It could be an old text, but some parts don't add up. Might be a reimagination of a classic text that I'm not familiar with. It's a song, or a hymn, rather. Very repetitive. Can't make out anything legible on this one. Sorry. A list of someone's lucky numbers. There are no less than 71 of them. Dear Diary. And that's it. A model of a pipe section. It's a catalog of bolts and screws for skysail joinery. We iterators were built for pragmatism, so it's an understatement to say that we were not known for our appreciation of beauty. But the skysails in flight during the big festivals always filled my soul with emotion. It's the blueprint for a small incense purification filter. Life on the superstructure ecologies. An image of 5 bottles standing on a surface made of plants? I have no idea what this is. No, I don't want to talk about the content of this pro. A schematic of a bunch of gas pipes. I don't know the purpose for this machine, but it doesn't look particularly well crafted. It's just the numbers 14, 13, 5 repeated over and over. I have no idea what the purpose for this would be. A small portion is still legible, and thus we conclude that gold and water shall. Some sort of metaphysical or chemical treatise, perhaps. Oh, this contains an image of another pearl just like it. Let me look. Yes, as I thought. The image also contains an image of a pearl in it, and so on. Some comedian playing recursion games, I would guess.